The events occurred in Nador, Morocco, during the year 2015. Elias, an 18-year-old Moroccan Muslim residing in Norway, visited his family and found himself watching a movie late into the night at his home in Morocco. With the living room feeling stuffy, he opened a window for some fresh air, despite the late hour of 3 a.m. As he peered out the window of his fourth-floor apartment building, he noticed a solitary figure dressed entirely in black, with a hood concealing their face, standing alone on the dark and empty street below. The man standing outside with his hood covering his face at an unusual hour puzzled Elias. Although he initially looked away, his curiosity led him to sneak another glance. Suddenly, the man placed his hands on the wall of a building and began feeling it. To Elias' amazement, the man disappeared into the wall without a trace. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief, but couldn't deny what he had seen. Elias couldn't comprehend how the man could vanish into a solid wall without a door. He soon forgot about the incident and returned to Norway. However, 6 months later, Elias experienced his first episode of sleep paralysis, also known as jatham in Islam. Elias vividly recalls a conversation he had with a dark figure during his sleep paralysis, an experience known as jatham in Islam. His mother witnessed him speaking in his sleep, and upon waking up, he discovered swollen feet and rashes all over his body. Despite seeking medical help, doctors couldn't diagnose the cause of his reactions. Although he received treatment and was eventually discharged, Elias was never the same person again. He became antisocial and distant from people, prompting his mother to suggest that he undergo ruqya. Although initially resistant to the idea, he eventually agreed to it and decided to confront his doubts. A few months later, they flew back to Morocco for the next holiday season. Accompanied by their mothers, Elias and his cousin visited a Raqi in Morocco who was known to provide regular relief to Elias' suffering cousin. Upon arrival, they waited for their turn while the Quran recitation and sounds from the other room made Elias feel uneasy and sweat profusely. He felt angry and went outside to gather his senses until their turn arrived. Once inside, the Raqi began reciting the Quran and Elias' cousin immediately started reacting violently, screaming loudly and causing Elias to lose his senses and break into a cold sweat. Despite being a religious person who regularly prayed and read the Quran, Elias was confused about why he was screaming in terror and felt as if he was being tortured. Even the slightest touch from the Raqi felt like a knife stabbing him, making the whole experience very intense and powerful. Elias sensed the presence of a jinn within him, which led to the most horrifying night of his life. For a week, he was unable to sleep alone as he was mentally tormented by these malevolent entities. As time passed, Elias became increasingly consumed by demonic thoughts of hurting his own family, and he started to hate everyone. Even his sister's face appeared distorted to him, adding to his torment. He knows these beings are playing with his head. His whole life turned upside down. He would regularly think of harming his own family, but luckily, he never did. He would regularly think of harming his own family, but luckily he never did. A few months later, Elias was back in Norway and life was back to normal. He was relieved that he was in a good state of mind and that the horror was over. At the time, he worked at a local grocery store. After a Christmas celebration at work, which he did not participate in, it was late at night. It was late at night. He was walking one of his colleagues back home from work. She was a young woman and she was scared to walk alone. After they reached outside her place, she asked him, "Where's that other girl that was with us?" "What girl?" Elias asked. Despite Elias being the only one present, his colleague swore that a woman with black hair and pale skin was standing next to him, staring at them both with anger. Although this entity appeared to give Elias a break, it continued to haunt anyone who showed intentions towards him. During the encounter, Ilias was puzzled as to why his colleague seemed so uneasy and disturbed. She claimed that there was another woman standing next to him, with long black hair and pale skin. The woman appeared to be angry and was staring directly at Ilias' colleague. Ilias was taken aback by her words as he was unable to see the woman his colleague described. However, he was aware that he had been experiencing supernatural occurrences, which had left him feeling vulnerable and anxious. Despite the entity appearing to give Ilias a break, it continued to haunt those around him who had any intentions towards him. As the days passed, Ilias found himself constantly on edge, fearful of what the entity might do next. The thought of the jinn's presence hovering over him and his loved ones filled him with dread and apprehension. He knew that he had to seek help before things spiraled out of control. This story is one that will send shivers down your spine. It took place in Argentina in 2022, and it is a true story that is both bizarre and chilling. The incident was captured on CCTV footage, making it all the more eerie. The story begins with a security guard working the late shift in a hospital. At this time, the hospital was quiet, with no patients coming in. Suddenly, the automatic doors at the front of the hospital slide open, and the security guard stands up to greet the patient who has just entered. The security guard proceeds to walk up to the supposed patient, handing them registration papers, and grabbing a wheelchair at the same time. It seems as though the patient is in pain or unable to walk, as the security guard helps them sit in the wheelchair. But here's where things take a shocking turn: there was no patient. As the CCTV footage shows, the security guard was conversing with someone who was not visible on the camera. It appears that the security guard was completely unaware that he was speaking to someone who was not physically present. This footage is truly unsettling, leaving many questions unanswered. What was the security guard seeing? Was it a hallucination or a supernatural occurrence? Or was there someone else involved in the incident, someone who was not caught on camera? Whatever the explanation may be, it is clear that this story will haunt those who watch the footage for a long time to come. Before standing up, the security guard clearly spots someone and proceeds to inquire about their information or reason for visiting. He then invites them inside and fetches a wheelchair for their assistance. The nature of the being he was communicating with is unknown, leaving room for speculation. Some might wonder whether this being could be a jinn, a supernatural creature commonly found in Middle Eastern folklore. This notion leads to a broader question: what kind of entity was the security guard communicating with? The lack of information surrounding the being's identity and existence makes it challenging to determine. Regardless, this story raises an unsettling sense of mystery and unease. The possibility of encountering such an enigmatic entity is enough to send chills down one's spine. What do you think? Could this being be a jinn, a ghost, or something else entirely? The video footage of the security guard interacting with an unseen being has generated a lot of speculation and interest. The guard's behavior indicates that he is clearly seeing and speaking with someone who is not visible to the camera. The fact that he proceeds to fetch a wheelchair for this unseen entity only adds to the sense of otherworldly mystery. Many people have been intrigued by the suggestion that the being might be a jinn. In Islamic and Middle Eastern mythology, jinns are supernatural creatures that are said to be created from smokeless flames. They are believed to have the power to shapeshift, become invisible, and possess humans. Jinns are known to interact with humans and can be either benevolent or malevolent. Could the being the security guard was communicating with be a jinn? It is impossible to say for sure. However, the fact that jinns are known to be capable of shapeshifting and becoming invisible makes this a plausible theory. Others have speculated that the being might be a ghost or some other kind of supernatural entity. In many cultures around the world, ghosts are believed to be the spirits of the dead who have not yet moved on to the afterlife. They are often reported to haunt specific locations and may interact with the living in various ways. Whatever the nature of the being the security guard was communicating with, it is clear that this is a strange and unsettling encounter. The video footage raises many questions and invites speculation. Perhaps one day, we will have more information about this incident and what really happened that night in the hospital in Argentina.